So for the last 3 weeks, my usually slightly musty basement has smelled like apples. Around the 1st of September, we harvested about 20 pounds of apples from 2 small trees in our yard. I had high hopes of making applesauce to eat this winter and, some apple crisp for dinner. The apples needed a little more ripening, and so they've been sitting in the basement, getting more and more aromatic until this last week there was this cloud of apple perfume wafting up the stairs. And not having time to process the apples right now, and not wanting them to rot and be wasted, I called my mom and offered them to her. In return, she promised some jars of applesauce. Nope, it's true. I could just buy applesauce at the store this winter on any given shopping trip. It would still be nutritious. It would involve a transaction, paying for it with money earned by the labor of my spouse and I. And it would be one more faceless monetary transaction that implies my support for a corporate supermarket and industrial food production that removes us from the earth and the people who labor to grow, pick, and process those apples. It's interesting to think about money as a means to transfer the value of labor. Right? My labor, my spouse's labor, we make money, we pay money for something which, in turn, hopefully pays fair wages to all the people who produce that thing. But it's also reductionist, because it reduces the value of that relationship to a transaction of utility. And so instead, that eventual applesauce will still be an exchange of labor infused with personal relationship with the land, with food that we grew, that someone lovingly processed, and family. My household watered, pruned, and tended those apple trees to fruiting and picked the apples. And having more than we need or can use, we trade literally the fruits of our labor for the labor of making applesauce. Today's parable presents a whole different kind of transaction. Seeing that he will likely be losing his job for mismanagement, the shrewd manager makes some practical decisions. Without consulting his boss and hoping to curry favor for his upcoming unemployment, he makes some quick deals to reduce his neighbor's debt in return for at least some payment to his boss. From one perspective, those transactions could look a lot like theft and further mismanagement. But to his boss, it looks shrewd, smart, practical. And to everyone's surprise, he's praised rather than fired. Jesus goes on to talk about being good managers. But somewhere in there, he suggests that we are to be similarly shrewd, keenly practical, responsive to our context, to use every skill and resource that we have to accomplish God's mission. Because that's what Jesus is always ultimately talking about, is accomplishing God's mission. So the underlying question becomes then, what is money for? In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus does not criticize people for having monetary wealth and the associated social power. He often eats dinner with those people. Instead, he offers stories that invite us into using our resources, all of them, to support God's vision of a world where all people are fed. All people and creation are dignified. Natural resources are shared and respected, and peace prevails. Jesus realizes that financial transactions are part of how the world works. We recently heard parables about a woman with silver coins and a man with great wealth in the form of a large flock of sheep. Those are realities of his world and ours. And they often rely on a system that discourages and removes us from engaging our natural human tendencies for compassion and generosity and care for creation. Remember, this is a God. Jesus sees the holy in every one of us. And those same systems deepen the divide between people with economic wealth and those without, and result in the poorest people, typically people of non-European descent, living in the most life-precarious places. Jesus calls us to use our riches to build relationships, to see one another and creation as valuable and needed, the way that God sees us, to promote life and health for all, and to leave judgment about worthiness to God. I asked the congregation at the 8 o'clock service what they considered their true riches. And they named things like family and friends, beauty and art and community, where they belong. I brainstormed and came up with a few more. Contentment, integrity of actions and values, having choices, gratitude, forgiveness. True riches are not deserved or earned. They are grace. That is the definition of grace. And they are revealed through sharing ourselves, our unique lives and experiences and skills with one another. Every one of us already has true riches, and we can all grow more by investing ourselves in relationship to know one another and our community. In God's kingdom, community is where riches emerge, where we share our labor for the better of our neighbor, where my apples become applesauce to feed many families through the labor of someone else who has time and knowledge to process them, where we feed our neighbors at community lunch because people are hungry and we have food to share, and we eat with them and learn their names and stories without expecting anything in return, where we continually ask how we, individually and communally, can love and respect the earth and all living beings. Jesus is clear. Use everything we have at hand, every skill, practicality, money, creativity, experience, wisdom, everything we have at hand to accomplish the work of his mission: feeding, seeking, healing, serving, and loving our neighbor and all creation. Amen.